Hello and welcome back to the Consistency Project podcast. My name is Patrick Cummings. As always, I'm here with E.C. Sinkowski. Every week on the show, we aim to simplify the science of nutrition, health, and fitness, cutting through the noise to focus on the principles and practices that will help you perform better, feel better, and live better. Thank you for tuning into the show this time around. Hello, and how are you, E.C.?
Hey, good. How are you?
I'm excellent. I'm excited to have this conversation. It's going to be a little bit different than our usual episodes. We are going to talk about something that you've been working on. People probably, this unlikely to be the first mention of it for folks, but you've been working hard on a new app, a new 3 pillars method app. And so I thought it would be fun to just do kind of a short episode where we talk about the what's and the whys and the where to get to and all that stuff for folks to have one spot where they can get some information, get a sense of if it's for them. And then obviously we can tell them where and how to get it and start using it for themselves. Cool?
Yeah, for sure.
I would love to maybe just start with some of the basics. Give us the overview of what this app is, what it's doing, who's it for, if you have a sense of who's going to really sink their teeth into it and who you're really thinking about building it for. And then we'll get into some of the details. But let's start with right there.
Yeah, so it really is a culmination of the different products and services that I've offered to date, which hopefully is a combination of education as well as some accountability. And then in addition to that, because I know people need to do this in the long term, that whole sustainability thing we talk about, it also will have some meal inspiration. So it really is for education, meal inspiration, and long-term accountability. And yeah, it does that through lots of different stuff that we can get into in a little bit. But I think it's really for the person who wants that forever nutrition plan, the people that listen to this podcast who maybe have already bought in on the idea of consistency and sustainability of all of the other hacks and stuff like that. This isn't meant to find your, beach body in 10 days or to like drop 20 pounds in a month. This is, hey, what does it mean to find this forever nutrition plan where you get enough nutrition but still have the flexibility to live your life and also get after those weight, health, and fitness goals?
It'd be pretty funny if it was a lose 20 pounds in 2 weeks app after the 100 plus episodes we've done.
Lose weight fast.
That'd be a nice little twist. Okay, so again, real quick, if folks are just like, tell me where it is, I want to go get it because I love EC and I've been listening to this podcast for a while. Where do people go to, and I first should say, depending on when you're listening to this out there, folks, it's either out or you get on the wait list and you'll be the first to get on it. But regardless of the timing of if it's out and if it's not when people are listening, where do I go to get it or to get on the wait list?
Yeah, we'll put the link in the show notes. There is a 5-day free trial so that people can get a sense of what the logging would look like, what the meal inspiration would look like, as well as the education. So it, no surprise, starts people off with the 800-gram challenge, and you get a 5-day trial of that program as well as the logging. I will say you won't see all of the features, of course, in a 5-day free trial, but I think this is a great way if you're like, I wonder if this is for me, that you can kind of assess that.
Got it. And you just hinted at this a little bit, but we probably should have said it up front. 800-gram challenge. Lazy macros, 3 pillars method. Do the very quick rundown of what those each are and how folks progress through them as they use this app.
Yeah, so the 3 pillars method is the full comprehensive approach to your diet. And of course, I have people work through it in the progression where the first thing they look at is the quality of their diet, which we use the 800-gram challenge for, right? So we want to look at how many fruits and veggies you're eating. Then the second step is going to be, okay, in addition to that quality, we want to look at how much protein you're eating. And that's when we then do it with the lazy macros method. So we add protein to the diet. And then the third and the final step is to get those personalized caloric targets. And that's how we then start weighing and measuring everything and see how all of the pieces come together. And that's what I use in the 3 pillars method. So it very much is a progressive app that kind of works you through the levels, and also the feature set changes with that as the diet gets more complex.
Talk to us a little bit about the educational end of it and how the education is really what moves you along that progression.
Yeah, so the 3 different pillars each have a program associated with them. The 800-gram challenge and lazy macros both are 30-day programs. And the intent is to help you understand what you're doing and answer all of your frequently asked questions. I've certainly run these programs in different formats before. I tend to know what people are going to ask about why this protein level and why not more or less, and what about this fruit or vegetable and why organic and all of that stuff. And the content is dripped out on a daily basis because I understand that people have busy lives and that sometimes kind of sitting down for a 30-minute video is beyond it. So it's meant to be this short educational drip, 5-7 minutes or so on those first 2 programs where you get a little bit of information all while you're also implementing and then making the diet changes. And then the 3 Pillars Method program's a bit longer, a little bit more beefier. It's 40 days long, and I would say that the content is probably closer to several minutes, up to 10 minutes a day, but still meant to be these digestible, pun intended, of course, pieces to kind of help educate you all while you're making the diet changes. And I think that's really kind of my big focus, is it's not just about giving more information. We've certainly covered the information in the podcast, but now it's, okay, go ahead and implement it with the diet changes and have some of that logging accountability that helps you stick to it.
Okay, I've got some bigger picture questions for you, but before we do, anything that folks want to know about, like the launching of this, getting the app out into the world, getting the first users on there, are you doing anything to reward the early users?
Yes, for sure. So we are kicking off a 3-month extravaganza of the 3 programs where people can bundle them together. It's kind of this promo that will kick off on April 1st, essentially. They will get access to all 3 programs, but if they buy the bundle at $397, they're also going to get access to a chat support group with me, where I'll be answering daily questions and also be doing some live streaming. So this is a great way that you can get my support as you go through the app and go through all 3 programs. In addition to that, in April, I will also be holding a coach's masterclass. Now, the masterclass is still going to be separate and different from the app, which is going to be bit more detailed, a bit more science, a bit like a masterclass, all of that stuff. And that will be kicking off April 21st. But with this coach's masterclass, we will be using the new app. And so you can go ahead and get on the wait list by following the links in the show notes for that.
Okay, cool. So my big question to you, and I come at this from from a marketing perspective or a brand perspective, which is that you've been using over the course of all the time you've been running people through masterclasses, gym challenges, your own one-on-one coaching. You've used any number of different nutrition tracking apps, right? And folks will know, I mean, I can think of 2 or 3 off the top of my head, and I don't even really use nutrition tracking apps. And so my big question is, why invest the time, energy, effort, and resources into building your own versus just continuing to do what you've done, which is to say, hey, go download this app and I'm going to show you how to use it?
I mean, in some sense, it could work. I think what has happened, as much as I love all of the programs that I have there already, is inevitably people finish them and they say, now what? So it's like the masterclass might be 8 or 10 weeks long, and it's now what? Or the 30 days of the 8-gram challenge for a gym, and then they say, and now what? And I think what happens is, and I've joked around about this on social media, sometimes people will say, well, I did the 800-gram challenge. And I'm always thinking to myself, well, what are you eating now? Did you just go totally away from that? Like, you should have kept doing it, right? So my big problem that I was trying to solve was kind of this long-term accountability. And I kept hearing it from different people. I mean, I've had people come back through the masterclass because they like that experience, or I did accountability groups and all of this stuff because people need this long-term accountability. And I get it. We just need to keep putting into practice what we learned. And so that's what this app is trying to solve. And I think some of the ways that this app is attempting to do that, more so than the ones that already exist, because certainly the market is saturated already, is one, it's set up in the 3 pillars method, which people tend to resonate with when they come through my courses and programs, right? So instead of trying to jerry rig other apps to make it work, instead this adds up the weight of your fruits and vegetables, let's say, for the 800-gram challenge or stuff like that. It divides out your log according to the 3 pillars. One, it starts to resonate more from the specifics of the approach. 2, I also want it to be kind of a place where people get meal ideas. And I think having it kind of focus like, hey, nutrition can be simple. And here's just some simple ideas of things to put together, and to have community also be able to share their meal ideas as well. I find that that's really helpful for people. It's less about, okay, let's do another deep dive on cortisol, and more about like, hey, what are some really simple things that I can put together that are healthy that help me sustain this in the long term? And so that's what it's trying to solve, the longer term accountability, which I think in the format more like the 3 pillars method, as well as some of the meal inspiration, is really what I'm hoping to help people with.
Where did you run into issues with using other apps? If you did, is it as simple as like, there's just too much noise over there and I don't need you to pay attention to all that? And then here I built you an app that only gives you the information that, one of the things we do on this podcast all the time is like, that's a distraction, that's marketing, that's a distraction. And so I think you're really good at bringing people's attention back to, there's only a few things that really matter, and it's the consistency of doing those things that really matter. Is the app an extension of that argument in the sense of, all of that is just noise. And here I built you something that at least removes a lot of that noise from your phone, from your attention.
Yeah, I think a lot of these apps, and to be honest, this is where I started in 2017. I've had this idea since I started with nutrition, as I wanted to build an app, and thank God it didn't happen then, because I wanted to be the app which allowed people to do whatever they wanted in nutrition. And to some degree, I believe that. Like, if you're really successful with macros, keep on keeping on. I don't have anything against that. But I think what happens with some of these, let's call them agnostic apps, is they just have feature bloat, right? Or it's just so many different things that people can do that people are lost and like, well, what about this? And in fact, with my masterclass, I had a whole section that was like, okay, go turn this off, set this like this, don't look at this. Oh, we're going to export your data and look at it the way that I want you to do it. So it was a lot of kind of getting around the way that other people approach nutrition and more being like, no, this is all you need to focus on. That is a big part of it. Is it's not an app for all methodologies. It's an app to do the 3 pillars method. And I think people that resonate with the method are going to appreciate that of the app because, they're not going to be bogged down in all these other potential things that they're not using.
Is there some amount of irony coming from you, the person who has been using sticky notes forever and who every time we talk about a piece of technology, much like most supplements, you remind us that most of it is unnecessary? Is there a certain amount of irony for you building an app, or is there something about, it needs to be an app, right? You just said you've been thinking about this on some level for as long as I've started, we've done this podcast, as long as we've been working together. Why an app, I guess, is maybe the shortest version of that. Why an app? Why not something else?
Yeah, I mean, I'm pretty critical of health tech, big data, collecting data that's extraneous. And so for me, there was a big focus on that it has to be really practical and useful. And a lot of not a lot, but the logging changes the complexity of it. And the first stage of logging very much mimics a Post-it note, even the second stage of logging, just like I recommend. Back when I first started out in nutrition, I was going to some of these meetups about health tech. And I distinctly remember somebody who had been in the market for so long making the statement, hey, if the app is more clunky than a Post-it, he literally said Post-it, I'm not going to use it. And that's always been in my mind of like, okay, is this more productive and useful for people than just jotting down on the piece of paper next to their computer? And so that's built into the app to try to keep it as slim as possible for people. At the same time, I've been running this masterclass where I take people through a more detailed analysis and people really get a lot out of it. And I also believe that weighing and measuring for myself has been the best education. So I hope what I offer in the app and what users will see is they're able to kind of scale up and down the complexity once they work through the progression, that they can go back to something simple if that's what they need and where they get the results, but they can also go up and do the whole weigh, measure all the things for the period of time that they need to do that. And I think, again, that's some of the flexibility that an app doesn't offer. And the second point to that of, isn't it ironic that you're building an app, is I really wanted it to be food focused. And we'll see what the community thinks about that. But with the meal ideas, to me, again, it wasn't about putting it in an app with lots of content. Yes, there are programs, but I think what's going to make this sticky is more that people have some ideas and engagement around what to actually eat and put the method into practice versus just sort of theoretically understanding it. And I think, again, that's where some nutrition stuff goes awry. It's like, okay, what does the nuts and bolts of this look like in day-to-day application? And how do we make the habits easier versus just lots and lots of data?
Yeah, it's a little bit of like reading about CrossFit versus getting to the gym 4 times a week, right? You can read about it all you want, but until you're actually doing the thrusters and the pull-ups and the burpees and the push-ups, then you don't actually understand it.
And that's just a great comparison, because what do people do to stay accountable in CrossFit or street parking or any of the stuff? Is they often have CrossFit linchpin, they have the workout of the day, right? Yep. And so the meal of the day in the app is a lot of that inspiration. Hopefully what people really like about it is it's not going to necessarily be all these like really big intricate recipes. Somebody's gonna be like, oh, I just really love this combination of cottage cheese, mixed veggies, and everything bagel seasoning. And it's like, oh my gosh, I can do that in 5 minutes and it can be just as healthy. And so I think, to me, it's the parallel to kind of the workout of the day to help people see how they can apply this in a readily available way.
I think the anti-EC app would be gourmet meals and lose 20 pounds in 2 weeks.
I know. And forced into like really high level data tracking all the time.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Love it. Let's get into the details just a little bit for folks who might be really interested. Coaches, gym challenges, that end of things that you've done in various pieces and various ways before. How is the app going to serve those communities or those folks?
Yeah, so there are options for gyms and for coaches that come through my masterclass. So yeah, I think it was something like 1,600 gyms do either the 800 gram challenge or the lazy macros. And again, oftentimes they had success or they liked the program, but then for them it was, okay, and now what?
Yep.
Well, now what they can do through their own sort of gym specific account is they can run challenges multiple times. They can even run a challenge for the 3 pillars method level. They don't have to run challenges. They could simply offer it as their nutrition programs for people who come to their gym. Maybe they don't do necessarily organized challenge, but whenever somebody onboards, they say, hey, this is what we have our people use. Go ahead and get started. Gyms end up getting a 50-50% revenue split because it's your clientele. And then I think for a lot of gyms, it can be a great way to address nutrition without having to reinvent the wheel. Or I know a lot of gym owners who, they don't want to deal with nutrition, but they know it's important, right?
Yep.
So there is an option for gyms to run challenges, but also drive revenue without reinventing the wheel. And then coaches have some additional feature set. They get to look at client logs. They get a better revenue split. And that's because they've come through the masterclass. They understand it from a coaching perspective. So yeah, there's going to be those features as well.
Got it. What if I've done the masterclass in iterations before, whether it was 3 months ago or 3 years ago? One, is this for me? And then 2, should I also be using this? Is this something that is going to benefit me in addition to the work that I did with you in the masterclass?
Yeah, I mean, I think the masterclass still stands as it is. It's not like all of a sudden in the app, I'm like, well, calories don't matter, or like, you only have to eat kale. So there's going to be some repetitive concepts. And if you're off and cruising, I encourage you to keep doing what you're doing. But I do think that the app can be useful because I think sometimes we forget how repetition really does help us. I don't know how many times I've had to go back to various concepts and relearn them and be like, oh yeah, that's what the Krebs cycle is. And like, oh yeah, this nutrient is needed for that, right? So I think it can help people who want to kind of go back through programs and reconnect with material. And of course, every time you see something, it's going to help kind of add to that. So yeah, for my past masterclass customers, I definitely will have a promo out for you as well. So if you're on my email list, you've either received that or will be receiving that soon. If you're not and you want to get in touch with me, you can. You're basically getting a 50% off discount, one-time offer to get everything bundled and to also join the chat group for the next 3 months. So definitely capitalize on that. And I am also offering a discount for people that have purchased past programs. Maybe they did a 30-day of the 800 gram challenge with me or with Street Parking, or maybe they've purchased ebooks. So again, you can contact me to get the discount if you haven't already seen it in your email. And we'll put a link to maybe the contact in the show notes as well for people that applies to and they haven't heard. But this is all going to end by April 1st because that's when we're kicking off. And so, yeah, I want to get people on the app and tracking.
Amazing. Last question that I just remembered that we should hit on, because I actually saw somebody ask you this I think on Instagram, which is this an iPhone app? Is this going to be available on Android? Is this something I can use on my computer? Like, just give us the real quick nitty gritty on that.
Yeah, the tech specs. So it's actually
what everybody cares about.
I know. Yeah, this is where we lost all the listeners. It's just a web app. So you don't have to go to your app store. You can end up creating a bookmark and just have it on your iPhone or Android. And it also, of course, will work on desktop as well. Yep. So pretty easy day. We'll work on all the mobile devices. Depending on when folks are out there listening to this, it's either get on the wait list or just jump in for that April 1st kickoff, be the first to get into the app, be the first wave to get through the 800 gram challenge, the lazy macros, and of course the 3 pillars method programs. Thank you, EC. I'm excited to get everybody's hands on this app. I know you've been working hard on it for quite a while, even though you were quiet about it. So folks, if you've been listening to the show, you want to support EC, you want to support what she's been working on, and also finally tackle that nutrition challenge that you've been putting off, this is the way to do it. So get in the app, let us know what you think about it, and EC and I will be back next week for a brand new episode of the Consistency Project podcast.